our studies, and yesterday we were able to look at the concept of globalization. We examined the concept of globalization yesterday, where we explained first of all the concept of contemporary, that's what it means, that global, and bind it together to understand the word or the topic contemporary because of which we proceeded to look at globalization. That's the importance of the concept globalization, the interconnectedness of nations and countries, generally the world. And we said the world has so become globalized or so become connected such that we are neatly together. We depend on each other to carry out our activities or to carry out one thing or other. So today, we've also proceeded to look at the advantages or let's say the merits, goods that come out of globalization. Things such as trade, economics, commerce, because the country or the nation can produce and have the opportunity to export, have the opportunity to reach out to other markets, have the opportunity to reach out to other countries or nations that may not have what they produce or have what they have. So we examined that yesterday. We also looked at how countries can benefit from each other in terms of security and all of that technology. After that, we also looked at the challenges. We say one of the challenges is, urbanization, population explosion, where people are migrating so much to urban areas of the government. It is better opportunity to thinking about urbanization. And on the other note, also it has some security challenges that comes along with it, poverty, because of the sprout or resources and all of that. So we examined all of that urbanization. We also looked at other aspects like climate change that affects weather, which we classify that is one. So also we are looking at terrorism. This is quite broad topic. But as you can see my slide, I'm going to be doing more of summary here because we only have few contacts for this class and we may not be able to do the detailed work because of the short time we have. So for that reason, I'm going to be summary. That's contemporary forms of terrorism. We look at political psychology that drives terrorism, climate change, and all of that. So which is all still part of the philosophy, which is contemporary and global studies. So terrorism comes out of the word terror. It is built from the word terror. And what does it mean when you do the word terror means to put fear? Somebody to put fear in people with the aim of dominating, with the aim of gaining advantage, or with the aim of attempting to carry out several acts. And these things have taken a new turn in our day-to-day. Previously, in the week of understanding terrorism, it was majorly used by groups to achieve basic goals of what they wanted. So it's like what we have that when teenagers are growing up, some experience bullying, which is not in any case good. And bullying thrives on putting fear. When somebody puts fear in another person, and because of that fear, it causes the other person to have upper hand and control. Okay, but which of course in any case is bad, but in a larger scale and in a more deeper sense of it, terrorism is more than what it just is about just putting fear, because terrorism is driven by ideologies. Terrorism is driven by beliefs. Terrorism is driven by people's or a group's uh, plan to achieve certain goals. So we will not just look at terrorism from how it came, we're also looking at the modern forms of terrorism. Because terrorism is not just even bombing or as we been doing, but it's even beyond that. So we're going to be examining all of that. So terrorism is predominantly to use by groups to achieve their goal. And it has been on the increase in recent time and has become one of the threats to global peace and global stability of security. Since terrorism is not limited to regional or territorial conflicts, but often relates to cultural and religious differences among people. So, as widely defined in most political discourse, now you must understand that many definitions have evolved over time about terrorism and the concept of and this concept, but I will just be picking a few here and there because we may not be able to exhaustively examine all of these definitions of terrorism that has evolved over time. So we said the word terror first appeared in the reign of terror during French Revolution, according to Alda. And terrorism dates back to the first century. But it was a period where religious cycles were dying in the service of God, dying while killing the assumed enemies of God. So it is important to note that the history of terrorism cannot be complete without stating the genesis of modern day suicide bombing in our world. Okay. Well, terrorism started as an act of putting fear where people wanted to gain advantage and dominance, and they did that. But in our today's world, we see that terrorism has taken a new turn. Yes, even as far as bombing, and you see certain groups and terrorist groups taking ownership of that responsibility. Yes, this the modern day issues in terrorism has evolved. So terrorism means different things to different people at different times. Which has 2014, he has submitted that terrorism is a method of combat in which random or symbolic victims get targets, become targets of violence. Targets of violence. Terrorism is one day detection that is by terrorism and have the method of by applying a wide variety of violence and methods that specify to further professional work with conquered. There is a that well. So terrorism is an act, which is the act or the good at content, an act of that dominant or summary goal is what is political. Okay, there are different forms of that. About not as different to find that contextualized terrorism regional blocks. European Union, United Nations, the Arab Foundation, and most others. Terrorism in the African Union is also EU not mentioned with the Organization in Africa. This convention on the prevention and combating of terrorism defines terrorism as any act to safe violation of criminal laws of its state party. Any violation of the criminal laws of the state party which may endanger lives, physical integrity, or freedom of or cause of injury or death to any person, number of personal groups, and causes a damage public or private property, natural resources, environmental or populated heritage, and it's intended to intimidate, put fear, coerce, use government, bodies, constitution, and general public or any segment thereof to do or abstain from doing any act or adopt or abandon a particular standpoint or act according to certain principles. This is in Article 2 of the African Union of acts. So what we are, you see, this definition now captures all that terrorism is all about. It first of all starts by um, telling us that it's an act that violates law, okay, and it puts physical life, property, freedom, of even natural resources, environmental, cultural, it puts all of them in there. Then not only that, it also begins to intimidate, put fear, coerce the government institution to act within their will and in the view of better attempting for who and terrorists. So you see that terrorism is very broad, it's very wide, and the goal of it is not good in any sense. It's only an act for a few persons to achieve their goal and objective and what they want to achieve. Okay. So, as we begin wrapping up on the definition, I believe it's clearly understood the concept of terror and terrorism as we know it and as I've explained. And in summary, also understand that terrorism is the act or disruption of public service or delivery of any essential service to the public, to create public emergency and to create general insurrection in a state. Terrorism has become a feature of the national life. The phenomenon has been variously described as tragic and strategic, a crime and a holy duty, a justified reaction to oppression and an inexcusable abomination. So, strategy of most terrorists is to commit acts of violence that draws attention of the public and local populate the government and the world to their cause or what they want to achieve. They plan their attack to abstain the greatest, to obtain I think about the greatest publicity, choosing targets that symbolize what they oppose and their aim to imbibe the culture of fear and intimidation of him. So this is a comprehensive definition and explanation of what terrorism is. Okay, so let us look at what the UN Security Council defined terrorism as. The UN Security Council, under the Regulation 1566 in the year 2004, defines terrorism as criminal acts including against civilians committed with the intent to cause death or serious bodily injury or taking hostage with the purpose of to provoke a state of terror to the general public or a group of persons or particular persons, intimidate a population or compel a government or national organization to do or abstain from doing any act. So this is United Nations Security Council definition of the word terrorism and how it operates. So even Kofi Annan, who was former United Nations Secretary General, a great leader from Ghana, also all have been involved in the fight of terror. Okay, and their proposal also. So as I said, we will not be able to go into the details, but let us look at several things that deduce from it, because we may not have time to tell all of what we are discussing. Okay, so let's quickly proceed and look at explain all of this. I hope I put in my slide. So let us look at contemporary forms of terrorism. Contemporary forms of terrorism. Now, globally, terrorist organizations try as much as possible to seek attention through the use of acts of violence, fear, intimidation, and coercion, mostly directed towards unarmed civilians, and in some cases military formations as well as state infrastructure in order to instill fear and apprehension on the general populace. So this is the plan, the goal of terrorists, as we have seen over and over. But we need to understand that terrorism is classified into various categories. Yes, if we must understand terrorism, how it works, then it's good to segment it into different categories in order to study it, understand how it works, then effectively know how to deal with it. So we have political terrorism, looking at the forms of terrorism. We have political terrorism, we have caste terrorism, we have state-sponsored terrorism, we have limited political terrorism, and we have extreme violence. Okay, you may want to take that down. And we're going to examine them one at a time. So the first one is political terrorism. Now, political terrorism can be seen as the violent criminal behavior premeditated principally to generate terror, fear, coercion,